Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. I've said this on this platform so many times because it is true. But more significantly, because as long as we remain a failed state, millions of ordinary Zimbabweans will continue to suffer and men will die unnecessarily. This is a problem that we have to address, we have to deal with, we have to find solution to. In 2023, the nation held its elections. Elections are important in the sense that they are an opportunity to achieve meaningful change in a country. We are a failed state because for the last 45 years, we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections, and hence the reason why we found ourselves stuck with the same corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical Zanu PF thugs, complete with their equally corrupt and utterly useless MDC CCC sidekick. I keep referring back to MDC and CCC for the simple reason that if we want change, we've got to agree how are we going to accomplish that change. And in the case of Zimbabwe, the decision was made in the late 1990s that we should risk all to elect opposition leaders who will implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. The other option was for the country to wage another liberation war, to fight the Zanu PF dictatorship, because the regime is determined to hang on to power and it's not going to reform itself. So the focus has to be on electing a competent opposition that will implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And I believe ever since the launch of the MDC in 1999, the country has had many opportunities to implement those reforms. 2023 showed that Zanu PF is still able to blatantly rig the elections and to get away with it. Proof that MDC CCC leaders have failed to implement even one token democratic reform. And ever since the 2008 to 2013 GNU, they've been participating in these flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. So it is imperative we understand. And what I want really to explore today is why is it that 25 years after the nation made the consensus decision to elect a competent opposition whose primary task would be to implement the reforms, why is it that Zimbabweans have failed to realize that the MDC CCC opposition are not up to the task. There have been many instances when the penny should have dropped. Seminal moments when people should have realized that MDC, CCC are not up to the task. Just want to play a video clip of this cartoon American Tale, illustrating the point of the seminal moment, the soul on the road to Damascus moment. Just listen to this.
McDuff, play on. I don't know which is worse, the music or the Shakespeare. Rats! This nose here keeps getting in the way. You could stop playing. That's funny. I've never known a cockroach with good taste. But I've known plenty that taste good. Play. Moving deep. You're not a rat. You're a cat. How'd you get in here? Come here, you little... Ah! Oh! Gentlemen, cat's out of the bag. Get me that mouse.
The important point here is that the character at the beginning there, Warranty Rat, was telling the mice that if they pay him protection money, you will stop the cats killing them. And the mice had been paying all this protection money, and yet the killing, of course, continued. And on this senior moment, one of the mice realizes that actually Warranty Rat is not a rat at all. He's a cat. So they've been cheated all along, made to believe that he is giving them protection, and they're to keep on paying this protection money, when in reality, he was a cat himself and was working in total cahoots with the cats. And they never stopped killing the mice. I would like to emphasize that there is a parallel with our situation in Zimbabwe. People have risked everything to elect the opposition, MDC, CCC, for the purposes of implementing the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging elections. That was the number one purpose why the people of Zimbabwe risked all to elect the MDC, CCC. Here is a video clip, 2013 elections.
Zanu PF. Einer hat gesagt, sie kommt von weit her, und einer hat gesagt, sie sind Universität.
How can we cheat like this?
There are some buses which are here.
Two buses there. One street in Mount Pleasant. One street. I think we shouldn't allow this. Officer, we don't want to be accused of disruptiveness, but this is not on. We can't allow this. Ask anyone who is clean show van. Ask this one, where does he stay in Mount Pleasant?
I will pay to my senior at Mount Pleasant.
All right, I'm going there. But you can see read.
Yeah,
But
we will take note of
Yeah, we
but
can't.
you don't take note of them. Stop by one.
That's why
Stop.
Stop because this is not on that we can have this blatant cheating. They are from the raw areas, yes. Yeah. Taken to think and then posting as officers. They've been passed by those buses, as you can see. As one of them, a single address in Mount Pleasant. Just one. You need a bus to come from Morris Depot. Morris Depot is just across the road. You need a bus to come from Morris Depot.
But their sleeves are retained Mount Pleasant.
So why were they carried with buses?
Just take a sample of 5. Go to the voters room with the sleeves. You find them not in the voters room.
They're not in the voters room.
But their sleeves are retained Mount Pleasant, so we don't have the powers. So
when you are recruited, you have to shave your head into the police.
So you think they are in the police in a role?
Do not have to play to the end. I think many people have seen this video and should also know what happened afterwards. When Tendai BT complained of the blatant cheating, everybody thought him and his colleagues were going to walk away from this whole election process. Because there is no doubt that the election process, Zanu PF was rigging. But guess what happened? Tendai BT was declared the winner in Mount Pleasant. And that's all he cared about. Once he got his seat on the gravy train seat, he didn't care that the process was flawed. You have to imagine if Zanu PF is doing this in urban centers where they know that they're not likely to get away with it. What more in rural areas? Are we then saying that the urban voter is the only one who is entitled to a meaningful vote, and those in the rural areas are not? Because that is exactly what has happened here. Yes, they tried to cheat in Mount Pleasant, but because it's not so easy for them to do so, Tendai BT was still able to win his gravy train seat. But there is no doubt that there was an attempt to rig the process. And the only sensible thing to do here is not to look at just the urban setting, but to look at the bigger picture. To realize that this when we said people were risking all to elect the opposition to implement democratic changes, we were not just talking of urban areas alone. We're talking the whole country. So the most sensible thing for Tendai Biti and company to have done would have been to reject the whole 2013 elections and demand that measures should be taken to make sure that that kind of blatant cheating does not only happen in the urban centers, but does not happen in the rural areas too. And indeed, even more so, because the rural areas are the ones where they're not likely to have closer monitoring. But as we say in Shona, watumabete kumkaka. Soon as Tendai Biti realized that he had secured his graviton seat, he didn't care about the bigger picture. That should have been an important point to Zimbabweans, a wake-up call to Zimbabweans to realize that the MDC CCC leaders were only interested in furthering their own ends. Indeed, those elections were 2013. The very fact that Zanu PF was able to blatantly rig, as we saw, is proof that the GNU that had preceded it, 2008 to 2013, had failed to implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop that blatant cheating. If the people of Zimbabwe had been wide awake, they would have realized that our MDC friends had failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU. 5 years, and they failed to implement even one token reform. The main problem we have in Zimbabwe, why we have a failed state, is that, yes, we have got a corrupt and tyrannical Zanu PF ruling party that cares about nothing but retaining power at all costs. But we also have a problem with the opposition, whom the people risked all to elect to implement reforms. But as soon as they got into power, they forgot about the reforms. They started chasing their own selfish interests. Indeed, Mugabe was quick to realize that as long as he can bribe these MDC guys with the trappings of high office, they will forget about the reforms. And that is exactly what happened. The other tragedy here is that even after 25 years, with Zanu PF continuing to rig elections, the people themselves have not realized that MDC CCC leaders are Zanu PF Team B in all but name, playing for Team A to win and have legitimacy. compare with, go back to the cartoon that I showed you earlier on, when Feifel happened to stumble on warranty rat and he took off his nose, let his ears stretch to their normal, usual self. He could not deny his own eyes that warranty rat was a cat. And yet, the Zimbabweans, we have been very slow at realizing that our MDC, CCC friends, as much as we have risked all to elect them, thinking that they will be pushing the national agenda of stopping Zanu PF rigging the elections. The reality is, as soon as they got into power, they started trading with Zanu PF. Zanu PF leaders bribed them so that they forgot about the reforms. That is why we are a failed state today. Pleasing to note that there are at least a few leaders who have realized what is going on here. And one of these individuals is Margaret Dongo. And she has clearly identified the problem with our MDC CCC leaders. And here she is speaking to the subject.
Not a business. This is what I want to remind most of our MPs and other people.
Do you think they look at it as a business?
Yes, they look at it as a business. Because they look at it as a business seriously. Because the moment they go, business and employment creation. Because if they go to parliament, you are employed. You get a car, you get a stable salary, and you are paid until your term is over. Already you are employed. If you are out, you're out of employment.
If you serve 2 terms, you get a pension?
You get a pension. Then already, this is why people kill in politics. They kill to be in parliament. This is why we have violence in this country. Because there is no employment. The only employment which is there is in politics. There is no other outside employment. So for them, a very good example is, look at what happened to CCC, the CCC party. Have a look. When they lost, when they said they were rigged, what I expected from them, I expected all parliamentarians to say, we are not going to go to participate in a rigged system. And we are not going to sit in a rigged parliament. Because the elections have been rigged. So all of us were not going to parliament. Imagine what could have happened. We could have gone into new elections. There's no way Zanu PF was going to roll alone.
You think so?
Yes.
Do they care?
Caring or not caring, the public would have forced them because the majority of the people would want representation in parliament.
But they went anyway?
But they went. They realized that, you heard them complain, I used my own money to be in parliament. But what about me who have voted for you?
This is the reality. So if you have got both Zanu PF and the opposition MPs who have been corrupted by the regime to look at their own interests, and they've forgotten about the primary task, particularly of the opposition, was to implement democratic reforms so that we can get the nation back on track, cure ourselves of this case of rigged elections and bad governance. Instead of looking at that bigger picture, all they are now after is a few gravy trains for themselves. That's why we are caught up in this vicious cycle. As long as we participate in a flawed election, knowing fully well that by participating, we are giving Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuating the dictatorship, then we ourselves have a problem. This is where our problem lies. Nearly 2 million people were conned by Chamisa in 2023. That Triple C was going to win big. And they should participate in those elections. Because Chamisa, they plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. Of course, he was lying. Chamisa and company were only after the few gravy train seats that the new Zanu PF gives away to entice the opposition to participate. And we, the ordinary people, were foolish enough to believe Chamisa's lies. We are slowly but surely moving on to 2028 elections. And the signs are many, if not 2 million, will once again participate in those flawed elections to perpetuate the Zanu PF dictatorship. We have failed to read what is happening here. And for that, we are paying dearly for it. Think about it. Thank you. Sorry about that.